Here's something I probably should have mentioned a while ago. Spiritual exploration is only one part of a much larger process. It's the preliminary stage, the fact-finding stage, where we gather all the pieces, sort them according to color and shape, and try to figure out where they fit in the puzzle. It's the part of the process where we try to learn about our story, where we try to learn about the beliefs we hold regarding ourselves and the world around us. What we do with the information we gather at this point is a subject for another day. For now, let's focus our energies on the task at hand. Discovering what we truly believe deep down in the core of our being is neither simple nor straightforward. We're too close to the content to see it clearly and objectively. Just as the eye perceives all, but can't perceive itself without the help of a mirror, so too the mind cannot apprehend itself and its content without the help of various methods and practices. And these are the metaphorical tools of the trade that I would like to share with you on today's episode of The Outsider's Perspective. Imagine that the mind is a tornado whose force carries our thoughts, emotions, motives, and values in a never-ending circle. Anybody who's ever been plagued by an endless chain of anxious or fearful thoughts will likely endorse this image of the mind. If you've ever paid close attention when this sort of thinking takes over, you eventually see that your frantic thoughts come full circle. When left to its own devices, the mind operates in a circular fashion. At the onset of our journey, we find ourselves on the outer perimeter of the mind, swept along helplessly with the elements of our story. We're fully embedded at this point, an intrinsic and inseparable part of the narrative we inherited. We can't find stillness in this position. We're always moving, tumbling and turning with the mind. We might catch glimpses here and there of the story that we're trying to learn about, but these are fleeting as we fly through life without time to pause or reflect. Now, our first instinct in this scenario might be to get out of the tornado and create distance so that we can see the mind from a relatively stable point of view. And that's a great idea, but there's one tiny little problem with this approach. When we view the cyclone from the outside, our field of vision encompasses one corner of the mind, so that thoughts and ideas fly in and out of sight. What's more, we're only seeing the outside layer of the mind and nothing else. So, instead of backing out of the tornado, we're going to do something rather counterintuitive. We're going to advance further into the tornado, toward the eye of the mental storm. This is the still point, what I and others call the center. And from this position, we have both stability and a 360-degree view of everything that surrounds us. The center is a state of mindful awareness that can be cultivated with practice through meditation, immersion in flow states, and exercises of that nature. While centered, you can actually watch thoughts and emotions circle around you without getting swept up by their momentum. And you can follow their full trajectory, seeing where they come from, how they trigger one another, and of course, the consequences to which they lead. That's what happens when you successfully observe the mind without losing yourself in the mind. You create distance between yourself and the thoughts and emotions that course through the psyche, making them easier to study objectively. Mindfulness, the art of finding and keeping your center, is the first tool you should familiarize yourself with before plunging deeper into the so-called hell of self-knowledge. When you can watch ideas and emotions without becoming infected by them, when you can observe all the crazy thoughts that pop into your head without judging or criticizing yourself, when you can hear your thoughts without automatically agreeing with them, then I suggest you start experimenting with step 2 in our process. For this, you'll need to dust off an old toolbox from your childhood days called asking questions. If you haven't already, you should probably start cultivating curiosity towards all things, yourself most of all. If you find this difficult, it's probably because you still believe that you know certain things. You might even be certain, which I suggest to you is a deal breaker when it comes down to spiritual exploration. It's impossible to be curious and certain about something at the same time. Curiosity implies uncertainty and requires not only ignorance of a subject, but awareness of said ignorance. If you think you know, there's nothing to be curious about. And if you don't know, you don't know. Again, you can't really be curious about it either. Without a genuine desire to know and understand yourself, spiritual exploration will yield very little of value. So whatever your other goals and motivations for going within, let this be the underlying reason for your adventures. To discover what the inner landscape has to teach you, and to integrate its wisdom into your life. That's why I talk about exploring rather than seeking. A seeker proceeds with an object in mind and searches for it exclusively. The seeker's attention is limited to, or even impaired by, the object he seeks. The explorer, on the other hand, has no specific object in mind. She simply wants to familiarize herself with the unknown. She wants to see what's out there. As such, she's open to whatever she encounters in her travels. The closer you are to the explorer's mindset, the more you will benefit from these expeditions into the psyche. Now, if you open your toolbox, you'll find different ways to ask questions, different methods of inquiry. These will help you dissect and analyze what you observe from the stillness of the center, and ultimately determine the value and validity of your story, piece by piece. Out of all the forms of inquiry in your toolbox, my personal favorite is the Socratic dialectic method. Technically 2 methods, but they're so similar they might as well be one and the same, as far as I'm concerned. The Socratic method is a kind of argumentative dialogue, like the one used by Socrates himself in the works of Plato. You ask pointed questions in an attempt to reveal underlying assumptions that may be faulty. The dialectic method, likewise, is a way to test and expand belief through conversation. Only, unlike the Socratic version, the goal is not only to reveal underlying faulty reasoning, but also to salvage whatever truth you may find in the process. You start with a thesis, which in this case is the belief you currently hold. And then through conversation, you uncover a number of alternatives or antitheses. Once you've established a few alternatives, you conduct research and experiments in an attempt to identify not the one true thesis, but the valuable and valid aspect in each possible alternative. The goal is to walk away with a brand new belief, which is a synthesis of all of the valid and valuable things you've discovered in the process. Now, you may have noticed that these methods are conversational in nature. If you know people who are willing and able to engage in this sort of dialogue with you intelligently, then that's probably a good place to start. However, if you don't have a person like this in your life, you can reach out to me, and I'd be happy to serve as your Socrates. At least until you get comfortable doing it on your own. Because that, to me, is the ultimate goal. Self-reliance and self-sufficiency. Forget going to a therapist. I want you to become your own therapist. But how do I do this work all by my lonesome, Ollie? You don't expect me to talk to myself, do ya? Isn't that what people do when they're going out of their frickin' minds? Why, yes. Yes, it is. Which is exactly why I'm encouraging you to do it. As Alan Watts said, the only way to come to your senses is to go out of your mind. And in any case, what people call sanity is merely one type of consciousness, the type that is approved and endorsed by the majority. There's nothing sane about being a slave to your mind and a prisoner to your conditioning. So don't worry about the optics. Don't worry about what people will say or think. Start the conversation with yourself today. Write in a journal if you have to. Create a dialogue with your mind. Pretend that you're a lawyer and that the mind is your witness, and cross-examine that son of a bitch ruthlessly. Listen carefully to what it says and don't take any of it at face value. And with each belief you expose and examine, ask the mind, is this belief valuable? Is this belief valid? Keep asking those questions, and I will catch you on the next episode where I try to summarize the last 9 videos and provide some kind of conclusion. Wish me luck, and until then, live well, my friends.